Serious? What's the scariest, most horrifying situation you have found yourself in? Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. It's the second to last day of spring break and I'm in college. Two good friends and I dropped 2 tabs of acid each. We all had done acid before, but this was our first time doing 2 tabs at once. I was told after the fact that apparently these tabs were each double while we thought they were. So basically we each took quadruple the dose any of us had experienced before. The plan was to just stay and chill in my apartment the entire time and just enjoy the experience. I felt something was off when within 20 minutes I'm feeling the effects. Usually it takes me about an hour normally. I kept telling myself that because it was double what I was used to that it was going to get a bit more intense. A bit is an understatement. One of my friends couldn't handle it well at all. He tried drinking out of a jug of water he brought to stay hydrated only to dump the entire thing on him. This led to him going into my room and stripping naked. Now to clarify, this friend and me had been low-key flirting and coming onto each other the entire week of spring break. My other friend went to check on him only to come out and tell me that, he's naked and waiting for you in there. I felt uncomfortable because I didn't want to force a third wheel, but I also didn't want to explicitly reject my naked friend. I was crushing on him hard, and I didn't want to ruin any chances I had. Like a true bro, my friend said he would go chill on my balcony until we were done. All of this went on while we were in the middle of the come up. So everything's devolving and I couldn't focus on anything to save my life. I can't think straight to even make the right choices. My thoughts were derailing. I would begin a thought and end on a whole different one. When I went into my room I had a moment where I zoomed out and thought about the situation I was in. I should have stopped and understood we were all in over our heads. My vision started to be overwhelmed by colors. Mostly faint neons that were blobs moving in fractal patterns. The only thing I could manage to see were people's eyes. I'm just going to say one thing, sex is extremely difficult when tripping hardballs. He managed to get off pretty quick though. But this just triggered him apparently. He soon got angry. He trashed my room and ran out still naked. I was left pretty much naked and confused on the floor of my bedroom trying to get control of myself. The next thing I heard was my friend who was out on my balcony screaming the other guy's name. And then, he just jumped off the balcony. I immediately picked myself up and ran. I lived on the 5th floor. I make it to the living room where my balcony friend was standing in shock. All I hear is, "I can't do this, I'm sorry." And he took off. He walked through the city to my other friend's apartment that was a 20-minute walk away. He apparently kept hearing eagles screeching after him the entire journey there. I on the other hand was left there naked, in shock, tripping the hardest I've ever been in my life, feeling the start of a panic attack, and looking out onto balcony where the guy the first just fucked had proceeded to jump off of. I don't regret it, but I did look. I have a morbid sense of curiosity, and this led to me looking out over my balcony and seeing his naked body laid out onto the cement. He was positioned much like what the chalk outline of a body looks like. You know the outline you'll see in shows portraying a simple almost cartoonish crime scene. There wasn't any blood. I stared down not quite knowing what to do. 2 people had showed up and were telling me to call 911. I couldn't even begin to try to remember where I left my phone. I was still out of my mind at this point. The people probably realized I was useless because they told me to go put on some clothes. Yeah, still naked. I liked this idea cause it seemed like something I could do at the time. My thought process was much like this in those next moments. I can't put on clothes until I clean myself. I have to look nice for the 911 people when they get here. Brilliant me then proceeded to take the worst shower of my life. The walls of my shower were melting. Most of the doors to my apartment were open and everything was flashing blue and red. All I could hear over the shower running were sirens. I just started screaming for help. The water was burning me. I felt like I was in hell. Firefighters came up to my apartment. I had to have one of them help me put clothes on myself. I couldn't focus on the task of putting on clothes without someone reminding me every few seconds. They helped me calm down as much as I could. I was convinced that they were higher dimensional beings there to help transport me to another plane of existence. I was put on a stretcher and transported to a hospital. I didn't have any underwear on, it was too hard. I didn't have any shoes, they threw my keys at me, and my phone was dead but in my hands. At one point of the ambulance ride I was convinced I was unconscious on a surgery table fighting for my life. I thought I was in the middle of heart surgery and this was the point where I needed to fight to stay alive. When I was in a gown in a room at the hospital, I was convinced that this was the beginning of a zombie apocalypse game. One where you wake up in a hospital bed and had to explore the area. So I started exploring the hospital for a few minutes before I got caught and sent back to my room. They checked my heart rate periodically and gave me something to counteract the high. I'm pretty sure I spent the next few hours staring at what was probably a trash bin but to me looked like R2-D2. I also for some reason thought the R2-D2 trash bin was a higher dimensional being sent to watch me and judge whether or not I was ready to ascend. They charged my phone for me, got me a pair of shoes, and discharged me. I was very confused, shocked, and still high. It was midnight by that time, and I called an Uber to take me home. By this time my friend jumping off my balcony seemed like a distant lucid dream to me. It wasn't until I got back to my apartment to see the remnants of the scene that I believed it even happened. I went to sleep that night on my couch looking at my rug that looked like a moving sea and not knowing whether or not my friend was alive or not. Happy ending though, he survived the fall. His left leg was shattered, broke both his wrists, and had some cuts and bruises. No head injury. Also, none of us got into any sort of legal trouble. Sorry for the wall of text, it was an experience. Also sorry for any formatting as I'm on mobile. TLDR. Friends and I dropped acid and one of them ended up jumping off my 5th floor balcony. Then proceeded a shit show of an acid trip, and my friend survived. My roommate decided he was in love with me. This led to a lot of awkward and uncomfortable things. I asked him to move out, gave him a month or something. A few days later he downed a bottle of vodka. He attacked me. He attacked me on my bed, then decided to go brush his teeth. He caught me trying to call 911, pulled the phone out of the wall and destroyed it. 1999. I tried to escape and he choked me till I blacked out. I thought I was dying. I still have the scar where I hit my chin on the wall. I eventually did escape and ran to a convenience store in my pajamas and called the police. I still have flashbacks. He ended up in psych unit. My family helped me move all his stuff to his sister's house. A few years later he died of pancreatic cancer. During summer breaks from college, I was a camp counselor. We were on a canoe trip on a day that was about 50-50 for storms. These canoe trips were usually half a day long, 2 hours to a place where we stopped for lunch and to just hang out on the riverbank, and another hour down the river to another island to stop at and explore. Thankfully, we'd made it to the second stop before the skies started showing telltale signs of incoming storms. I made the call to get everyone back in canoes and headed toward our takeout point quickly. It started raining on that final leg, and then out of nowhere, it just seemed like the sky got pitch black. Never seen a sky turn faster. So as we approach the takeout point, I'm paddling like hell to take lead so I can get kids in canoes up the embankment. I radioed ahead to the camp to get some golf carts down the shuttle kids quickly. Before I knew it, we've got lightning crashing down around us as we've still got half our kids in canoes on open water. I'm frantically pushing kids up a muddy hill, swimming out to drag and pull canoes in, fighting mud to get canoes up this hill and out of the way. All while the storm is going ballistic all around us. Kids are terrified. I'm just trying to get the kids out of the water and not thinking of anything else. The next issue is that our takeout point is still a mile from any 4-wall shelter, and even with a multi-seat golf cart, we only have so much space in the cart. I put most of the younger and more scared kids on the cart and sent them ahead to a cabin, and took the remaining 10 or so teenagers with me and another counselor to what was effectively just a picnic pavilion nearby, 1 wall and a roof. I was 100% sure a tornado was going to touch down and we would be almost totally exposed. Tried to get them to get their backs against the lone wall and cover their heads, then find a tarp, not that it could do much, but better than nothing, to cover us, but the whole time I was just thinking, I am totally at the mercy of Mother Nature and I have no control over what happens next. Run into that a few times in my life, including a neighbor's house being struck by lightning and burning down with threat to catch my house on fire too. Being totally at the mercy of nature is fucking terrifying. A month after Sandy Hook, I was student teaching in a first-grade classroom. Although I was still in the observation phase, lead teacher was reading a story to the children on the rug when someone bangs on the door. We were next to the autism classroom, so I thought maybe someone was having a bad day. 3 minutes later, we hear the banging again. This time we, the lead teacher and I, look up and see someone with a ski mask doing the knocking. We quickly get all the kids into the shared bathroom and try to keep everyone quiet. Lead teacher calls 911. Kids are crying and we try to calm them but we're scared too. We hear bumping and moving in our classroom, so I am mentally preparing to die. Turns out, it was our janitor straightening our room. Come to find out all of this was a poorly planned active shooter drill. The administration didn't let anyone know, including 911 dispatch. There was a SWAT team on the way to the school. Kids refused to come to school the next day and I don't blame them. I don't know because I was just a student teacher, but I hope someone got sued. Don't read if you are sensitive about abuse and emotional story. I was in 2nd grade, about 7. My mom had shared custody with my biological father, so he got me on the weekends along with my brother. My brother would frequently go with his friends somewhere. I would be left alone with my biological father. I was on the couch when all of a sudden my biological father bursts out of the room and throws me to the floor. I started to cry and said, "What are you doing?" He then proceeded to beat me up and mostly damage my leg, where I would later discover that it had a giant bruise from my waist to just below my foot. He told me, "If you tell anyone I will find you and hurt you." I was abused for 2 years before I decided enough was enough and then told my mother. Nothing happened to him, but I now have a restraining order against him and my mother has full custody of me. But to this day I don't trust anyone as much as I used to. Got approached by a gangbanger, maybe 12 or 13. My way home from work with my fiancé, now ex-husband, one Sunday. I didn't realize something was wrong until I felt my fiancé start turning my engagement ring so the diamond was in my palm and told me to stay quiet no matter what happened. The kid pulled a gun from his waistband and offered it to us for $200. My fiancé said we didn't have any money. So the kid looked at me, waved the gun in my fiancé's face and said, "What if we gank you for her?" He stared him down and said, very calmly, "I'm on my way home from mass with my wife." The while, he's squeezing my hand as hard as he can and tucking me into his side. I don't know to this day why that worked, but the kid lowered the gun, looked at the gold band on my finger and said, "Yeah, okay. But don't tell nobody you saw me." Then he ran off. A woman in our salon passed out during a pedicure. Like sitting straight up in her chair, unresponsive. When we tried to get her to come around, her tongue, which kind of sat halfway out her mouth, did a roll like she was swallowing, then she started to twitch. I immediately said, "I think she's having a seizure." So they did what they could to get her to wake up. She was white as a sheet. It was the first I've seen something like that, so it made me sick on the stomach. Ambulance arrived, but she was conscious by then and was pretty dazed and sweaty, but all right from what we can tell. Her husband arrived soon after and they went to the hospital. A week later she sends flowers to the shop apologizing for the incident. She turned out okay and still continues her regular routine. My sister spotted her stalker outside my house, so my mother loaded me and my 5 siblings into the van to go to the police. Except we didn't go to the police, we drove around the oval behind my house looking for the guy to run him down. I asked her to let us out of the van because this was fucking crazy, and if she's going to be murdering someone she at least shouldn't do it with 6 of her children, 5 of them minors, in the back of the car. Her response was, "Sometimes when you're upset you do irrational things." I'm upset. We're going to run him down. We never found him and she eventually calmed down enough that she drove home again, but WTF. A group of my friends and I explored an abandoned asylum, mental hospital a couple years ago in the OKC metro. Very unsafe at night for silly college freshmen like ourselves. The first experience we had was all of us taking our merry time enjoying the darkness and generally fucking around. You have to come in through a broken window, and we were all gathered at the window just being dumb when we hear loud, echoing footsteps down the hall running towards us. We all did that. Who the heck is in here? Who's messing with us? Look and turn in, after realizing we're all present and none of us are sprinting down a dark abandoned hallways, booted out of there. The second time, we could hear a group of people messing with us, jumping from around corners and such, but they never got too close. We assumed it was an animal at first, but got brave, and realized it was a person. We managed to catch them and, after staring at a collection of seemingly drugged up 20-somethings, who begged us for cans of paint and cigarettes, we got the not-so-good vibes. Finally, you say, and tried to leave. The leader of the haunted asylum cronies asked if we had jewelry, which we denied. He then said the creepiest thing I've heard in my life. "I like jewelry. I take it off the girls here when they sleep." We fucking bolted. Aftermath of a school shooting. A cop searching cars for drugs and alcohol in the school parking lot got the kid before he got in the school. It was the night of prom, and as he's walking to the front doors, The first said he went to were locked, people start leaving. Kid opens fire, hits one kid in the leg, and then is gunned down by the police officer, after turning to and aiming at the officer. I hear a rumor that somebody was shot. Of course, we're in a small town and I say, no way. I grab my one friend and go to look out the front door into our school lobby from the gym. See the cop car lights lighting up outside like it's day, pull an immediate 180 degrees and walk back in. DJ pulls us aside and says we should tell people to not leave. Shortly after doing what he asks, I call my parents and tell them what's going on. They obviously start to panic and tell family, other parents what happened. I was the first person to call someone and say what happened. Soon, cops with rifles walk in and search for any more shooters, and start taking our names and addresses. My buddy is keeping me posted on Facebook. His dad has police radio, and tells me they have reason to believe it was a friend of ours. Really was one of the scariest and saddest days of my life. TLDR, my dad tried to kill us one time, wrote this in another post, but my parents had a lot of issues. My father was abusive and it all boiled over when I was 10. I have PTSD mainly because of this situation, so there's parts one don't remember and other parts one recall vividly. The gist of it is that I was sick. My mother left him to watch me in the kitchen while she put my sister to bed. I threw up while he continued to load the dishwasher, and when she came in and saw what was happening, she calmly explained that when your kid throws up, you actually have to help them. He lost his shit, starts throwing plates. I ran upstairs, getting glass in my feet in the process. Fighting commences. My brother must have woken up at that point, or he never went to bed, I don't remember, because he runs upstairs and we hide in the space between the couch and the wall. My mother shouts that if my father kills her, we have to call the police, and it's at that point that I remember he owns a gun. Deciding fuck it, I grab the phone and dial the emergency number. No go. All I hear is the dial tone. I'm sobbing hysterically and unable to communicate to my brother that the phone doesn't work, but he must realize, because he shouts over the stair railing that the phone isn't working. Our father helpfully explains, I cut the phone lines. We don't need the fucking cops here. Okay. Up till that point, I thought that was only a thing that could be accomplished in movies. My memory fades there, and picks up with my brother and I out on the balcony, deciding whether or not to jump and run to a neighbor. Doing so would mean injuring ourselves. Memory fades again. Somehow we got into the car. My mother is driving us to the police station and I'm in the back trying not to throw up again because we didn't have time to grab the sick bucket. Hell, we didn't even have time to grab my sister. And my mom tells us calmly that can we please pray that God keeps my sister safe. She doesn't want to scare us, but I know she's always believed children's prayers are more powerful. I pray that my father doesn't kill my sister. We go to the police station and I get shards of glass pulled out of my feet while my mother talks to the policeman. The policeman is in his late 20s. I remember hoping he'd ask me if I was okay, if he'd ask if my dad had done this before, so I could tell him yes and then I'd never have to see my dad again. He doesn't though. He was sexist and thinks my mother is exaggerating and being dramatic to try and get my father into trouble. He drives to our house and my mum parks in a dark area. I watch the policeman lead my father out of the house. He looks apologetic as he tells my father that he has to leave for 24 hours, and asks if he can drive him to a hotel or anywhere. Don't mind the 2 kids that this man had just traumatized. My father left for the night. The next morning, literally like 6 hours later, he was supposed to be away for 24 hours, he breaks in. I'm the only one home. I don't remember where my family went, but I think it was to pick up a suitcase from a family friend. I was still sick and couldn't bear to move, and I hide in the closet until he leaves. We left everything behind and flew across the country. We were homeless for 6 months, but we got away. Also, oh shit, this got long. I don't really know how to make anything short, so I figure most people won't read up until this point. If you do, I'm sorry. When I was 16, was living with my mother and my mother's partner at the time. Well, turns out my mum was a hoe and texting, seeing another guy behind this bloke's back. The bloke worked as a construction worker, so would wake early to get the transport to work. One morning he decides to read her phone, and that was it, he found out. He proceeds to storm out the door at 5 a.m. pointedly slamming it. I was still awake because I was heavy addicted to WoW at the time. 10 minutes later this guy comes back and runs up the stairs to the room where my mother was sleeping. They start arguing with my mother, only just waking up with someone shouting at her. They argue for 5 minutes, whatever, none of my business. She made her bed, now she must lay in it. literally and figuratively. Then it falls silent, not normal for my mother. I open my door and go into the room. Here is this 50-year-old bloke pinning my mother down with a pillow over her face, attempting to smother her. I had no fucking idea what to do. I'm 16, just in the middle of my final exams at school. So I grab a Guitar Hero guitar, and I just fucking hit the guy over and over till he turned and smacked me one, right in the face. A 50-year-old full-on punching a 16-year-old in the face. But that didn't matter. The most important part was I wasn't going to see my mother get murdered. And anyway, that's the scariest situation I've ever been in. It's also the story of how Guitar Hero saved my mother's life. When I was in middle school, I missed the bus, so I decided to do the 10-mile walk home. I live in a very rural area where a canyon separates the school from my house. I decided to freestyle climb down the canyon because I thought it would be quicker. The canyon is about 850 feet deep, and I ended up getting stuck on a steep slick slope that was about 100 feet off the ground. I thought I was stuck there and a goner. So I etched a note to my family in the sandstone cliff of the canyon. I put the date and was saying how much I loved them, and I died trying to be Bear Grylls. I ended up jumping into a bush that was like 10 feet away with small scrapes and bruises, and I was able to squirm to the safety of the bottom of the canyon. That note is still there to this day, and I'll never forget that.